I'll be hosting all of our panel discussions throughout the day. First up, I'm delighted to introduce, this is a long introduction, a professional golfer, pioneer in diversity and inclusion in golf, PGA coach and keynote speaker, Nicola Bennett. Nicola, great to have you here. Can you just start by just telling us how you got into golf in the first place?
Yeah, of course. I feel really, I hold a lot of gratitude to be here as well. It's really nice to see so many ladies in the room, and I'm really looking forward to engaging with you all this sort of morning. So I got into golf actually from Tiger Woods. When he started playing, like, he really inspired my dad. My dad saw him and was just like, oh my god, there's like someone who looks like me playing golf who actually looked pretty good as well. And he actually went down to a golf range in Stanmore, which is where me and Sammy, I don't know where she is, we actually both found out we both like grew up in Stanmore. So we went to that range and yeah, he bought like a really big bucket balls for me and my sister. And like he mainly focused on my sister, to be fair, because she was like, I was tiny up until like 14. And my sister was sort of a lot more built up than I was. I had a growth spurt at 14. And he was sort of just focused on her, and then he noticed like balls from my base like coming out like straight, and then like he like diverted more attention to me. But that's how I got into it, just from him being like so good at what he'd done, and yeah, my obviously dad had been able to like resonate with him and his culture and stuff like that. So honestly, if he didn't play, I really wouldn't even have got where I am to now, like in the sport, in the golfing world. So yes.
And can you talk more about how you got into the professional side of it then as well?
Yeah. Well, do you know, when I got to like 18, like all my friends were like going to like uni, and I was sort of unsure of what I wanted to do, because I wanted to be a professional golfer and like earn a living from it. But obviously with that comes a lot of like commitment and unsurety as well, because you don't know what's going to happen. So I thought, do you know what, I'm going to like take a gap year. And I worked in a retail shop at the time called New Look. I was there. I was also working in American Golf and Play Golf London. So for that year, I sort of worked 3 jobs, and I was sort of deciding what I wanted to do. And then my boss at the time, American Golf, John, he was incredible. He was just like, you should do the PGA degree. And basically, it's really good because you can work full time, and you can also like play and get a degree in golf. So then I just on the complete off chance, I called this location called the Grove in Watford, which is a really like elite golf course. And I just asked to speak to the manager there, and I asked him for a job, and I just got a job there within 2 weeks, which is actually really like hard to do. But sometimes you always, another thing that we'll probably speak about later, I always try and speak to whoever's at the top of the hierarchy in all things that I do, just to sort of build like a relationship and a rapport. So done that, and then I started working there, and I sort of played golf, and I was getting a degree like simultaneously. So yeah, that's how that sort of worked.
Wow. And talking about hierarchy, what was it like as you progressed through the ranks in, I guess, a predominantly white and male world?
Do you know what? I did face obviously like a lot of challenges. Not only being like predominantly the only black person, but also being like a black female and quite young. Obviously golf is quite backward in terms of like the cultural aspect, but also it's still quite backward in terms of like there being female involvement. So it was all sort of like at once. But I would say, like, in all honesty, some things were actually quite difficult to see, because whenever I went into like a room or to like a golf engagement, because I was sort of the only black female there, I could only sort of see white faces. So I kind of didn't see that I was the odd one out. But from different things that were happening, obviously like psychologically I feel like I had to take on more. But in all honesty, I actually do hold a lot of gratitude for it, because I'm really, really thick-skinned because of it. But equally, I'm really happy that we are sort of fast-forwarding in all of these areas and just improving. So it's all good.
Now you've been a huge trailblazer in terms of diversity in golf. So you've got into coaching as well. What made you want to get into that?
I would honestly say, out of all the things that I do, I'm really thankful to work with some really, great brands. But what feels the most fulfilling is sort of like my coaching business, because I literally see on a day-to-day basis like relationships formed. Sometimes, in all honesty, the golf is actually secondary, because I watch women talk about going through like divorces, breakups, cancer, and just them forming this togetherness and just almost just creating like a community that really helps them, and it's actually like therapy in a way. So I really would say like to day dot, like just forming that community is like the most rewarding thing, because really and truly like that's what life is actually about. So I would say that's the most rewarding thing I've done today.
I mean, I read on your website about your impact. You've introduced 1,300 women to golf and 3,590 children to golf. You must be proud of those numbers.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I really am. And yeah, I just hope to like grow that, you know, with like brands and awareness and just making golf like really authentic. I feel like I actually started like a spiritual journey in 2015. And I feel like we live in a really like forced, false pretense world, and I try and do everything I do with like authenticity. That's really important as well, and I think that naturally attracts people because people can actually like resonate to that. So that's really important to me as well.
Part of that, you've launched one of the most successful, or the most successful women's golf program in the country. What do you think makes it so popular? Is it that diversity aspect?
Yeah, it is, and just making it really current and fun, because I think most people when they think about golf, they just like imagine like older people like in G4s hitting golf balls and stuff like that. But like when you actually come, it's like completely different. Like I use like a lot of equipment, a lot of props. And we love having a boogie as well. Like we listen to Motown, Beyonce, reggae music, just everything, and everyone's like really like super like calm when they're sort of involved as well. So I think that like really helps it as well, because naturally if you're coming like into a golf club for the first time, like you see like all these sort of posher people, like upper class, you feel a bit uncomfortable. But to come to like the sessions and it just be like normal basically, I think that really contributes to them feeling really comfortable.
Yeah, breaking those stereotypes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so there's been so much talk in the media recently around kind of female sports people's kind of kit and clothing, and whether that should change, that it can put off young girls from being involved in sport, particularly as they move through puberty. Is that similar in golf? Have you found that?
Yeah, it is, but in the last sort of couple of years, I think all brands have had to like push forward in terms of making golf a lot more trendy. That's something that I've sort of always done, like aside from golf, like I just love like makeup. I just love it so much, and I like being like a bit glamorous, so I like to sort of bring that sort of into golf. And I think it's, well, two of the biggest barriers to women getting into golf is one, dress code, and two, like financially it's super expensive. So I try and make both of those like affordable and make it really trendy, and that definitely contributes, because if you think, like if you bought like golf gear and stuff from like Golfina, you could easily spend like a couple £100 like on a top and a jacket, and like most people like can't afford to do that. So just going to places like Decathlon or like Primark, H&M, wearing like gym sort of just nice stuff as well, that definitely contributes towards people like getting involved and just feeling really comfortable as well while they're having that experience in golf.
And in this current moment, how does being a professional female golfer differ to being in the male golfing world, and how do we start to breach that divide?
Well, it is actually getting so much better. At the moment there is still, I think like most sports, a really big sort of gap in terms of equality and like pay and stuff like that and awareness. But what has happened like recently is like the male tours have sort of taken the female tours under their wing, and like a lot of other brands are pumping a lot more money into it. But obviously we're still like quite backward in terms of just being sort of at the same level. But like I said, I feel like that's in all sports, and that's improving like with stuff like this. And I think as well, just people in different industries as well getting involved just to raise awarenesses and stuff like that. But all these things really do make a difference, and petitions as well, I think they're really impactful.
Now, golf is such a mental game, and what strategies have you implemented to help you remain focused in the middle of that?
Well, working with Rich, I'm not sure if anyone here knows who he is, but he's the reason why I'm here today basically, and he's been like a sports psychologist I've been working with for quite a while. Golf is so psychological, literally. I don't know if you guys have played golf before, but there's like water, there's bunkers, there's loads of like hazards and obstacles you've got to get over. And you've got to try not to actually think about it. But like when you're on a hole and there's water in front of you, sometimes you're just like, oh, I hope the ball don't go in the water. And like I think this also ties into a bit of what I was speaking about in regards to like spirituality. Like wherever you focus your energy, it's like you're setting out a frequency, and that's what's going to happen in life. high majority of the time. So it's really important just to be able to always have like a process to go back to, and like religiously doing the same things, no matter who is there or whatever task you've got at hand. Just to always come back to that, and the more consistent you can be with that, the better you're going to get at it, and you'll get like naturally mentally stronger from doing the same things.
And you've spoken before about your keen interest in neuroscience, and I was on your social media and saw that you had this ice bath video where you got in. You didn't flinch, like, at all. You just got in. You didn't say anything. It was incredible. The Wim Hof method, all of that kind of thing. What have you discovered, and have you used strategies from that in the middle of golf to remain focused?
Yeah, absolutely. So I done this keynote speaking course I think it was last year or the year before in January, and every morning we had to do meditation for an hour, and then we had to go into like this ice bath for 2 minutes. And honestly, it's the most painful thing that I've ever done, like in my life to this point. But what motivated me is I was sort of with some really like elite sports people doing it, and it was all like men, and I thought, I've got to do this for the ladies. I've got to do this literally. But what our mentor at the time was teaching us was how powerful the mind was, and literally when you focus on the ice, you can feel it in abundance. But when you're not thinking about it, you can actually feel warm, and that in itself is scientific evidence of how powerful the mind was, because when I was actually in the ice bath on the final day, I actually started to feel hot because I was focusing all of my energy just in between like my forehead, and I was just thinking about like radiating like warmth from my forehead, and I didn't feel anything. But when I first went in it on the first day, like I did feel it, but I just had to sort of stomach it and stay in it. But I definitely didn't feel it like after that. So like I said, it just shows like how powerful our minds actually are.
Wow, I can't imagine feeling hot in an ice bath, but that is incredible, the power of the mind. I've heard you use the term adversity muscles quite a bit as well in your talks, can you explain more in terms of breaking barriers in the sport, how you use those adversity muscles, and what do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, when I say adversity muscles, I literally mean all of the good characteristics and attributes that you can learn over the years. So for example, just being patient, being like authoritative, being like assertive, all these things I've had to grow from experiences, and especially being like a female in the industry that I'm in, you have to have it a lot more, because you've got to be a lot more patient with people that might be like rude or direct or dismissive of you because you're a woman. You might have to be a bit more authoritative because it's not great, but men do perceive you differently than they do other men. So say for example, if a guy was like, oh, this needs to be done, but if a woman said it, like it comes across as nagging because of how they perceive it. So I've had to be more patient but also more assertive in areas. And that's why I would definitely say that sort of my adversity muscles in all of these different areas have definitely grown through all of these experiences, but all for the good.
I guess you've got a foot in two different worlds as well, in the sporting and the golfing world, and then with your work with the ambassador of the Golf Foundation and the programme, you're in the corporate world as well. How do you marry the two?
Do you know what, on a Sunday, I think it's really important just to like refill our cups, whether you've got kids or if your work is really like intense or whatever. Like religiously on a Sunday, I just don't do anything, and I just really pause, and at the end of the day on a Sunday, I think, right, what can I take on like this week? And I think having that sort of reflective time is super important to allow yourself to take on all of these roles, because if your cup's empty, you can't actually do anything. So I think I do all of these things at once really smoothly and fluently, because I allow myself time to like recover, relax and feel good to be able to do it. So I think that definitely contributes to why I can sort of juggle.
And you mentioned before Rich, but you say you've been inspired by so many people to where you've got to. Who has inspired you to be the person you've become, and who's walked alongside you in this process as well?
Definitely Beyonce. I'm sorry, I just like love her so much. Do you know, obviously she's an incredible singer. I was at her concert last year and I couldn't stop crying. But when I was there, I just thought to myself, like, this woman is so phenomenal, and like, forget the singing and the dancing, like what she takes on, like the backlash that she's got from people like along her way, and how she carries herself and her work ethic. I've definitely adopted some of those characteristics, so I'm not even joking, like Beyonce really is my biggest role model. So yeah.
That's really cool. You've already achieved so much for yourself and for others in the golfing world and for diversity in that as well. But what is your next target?
Well, now going into sort of the keynote arena, I feel like it's sort of like my calling. I think about what I've sort of done in the golfing world, and like I said, like the path in spirituality, I think if they run sort of parallel to each other, I think my purpose now is to sort of get a message across to people, just sort of around the topics of being courageous and like being authentic and stuff like that. I really do feel like God uses people, and I just feel like that's sort of like my purpose. So yeah, that's why I obviously like invested into that keynote speaking course, and that's what I want to do. But obviously I still want to do like everything that I'm doing at the moment, because it does impact people like, in a positive way. And I'd like to get like some of my partners on board, like Callaway and Nike and stuff like that, because they've got the same values. So just to grow it like as big as possible, that's sort of like the next thing.
Great, well, best of luck with that. I've got one more question before there might be about 5 minutes for anyone else to have a question. So if you haven't thought of one yet, please take the next couple of minutes. If you could play a round of golf with any 3 other golfers from history, who would they be?
Do they all have to play golf?
Up to you.
Well, definitely Beyonce, right? I'd say Beyonce, Tiger Woods, and Annika Sorensson, and she was one of the best golfers of her sort of era, and just how she carried herself. She was actually from Switzerland, I think, or Sweden. I really liked just how she carried herself, so it would be really interesting just to have a conversation with her.
Great. Now, an opportunity for anyone else to ask Nicola any questions. Does anyone want to start us off?
Did you say you started playing golf when you were 14?
10.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
What would you say to other girls who are in that, going from primary school to secondary school, and, you know, Sarah gave us the interesting stat that women's sport had seen about the drop-off in participation in sport. You're obviously doing something that's not, I don't know, a common sport that's played in school, but I know, you know, it's done a little bit. Like, what would you say to girls, you know, for...
Well, I actually do go into schools for, I think, 10 weeks of the year, primary schools, and I think it's really about having conversations with parents and teachers and just allowing them to have access to golf, just because I really did mature a lot from getting into golf at 10, instead of like going to like shopping centres or chicken shops and stuff like that. That's what you did. It's what you do in Harrow. you would go to the golf course instead, and when you're there, you're sort of around all these older people, so you naturally have to have like better mannerisms and etiquette and stuff like that, and you're growing yourself as a person. So I think I sort of always influence the girls that I coach by saying, right, what do you want to do like when you're older? Do you want to be like an entrepreneur? Do you want to do X, Y, Z? And they say, yeah, and they all tend to want to do like quite really nice roles. And I was like, well, if you want to do that, then you've got to do all of these things, which means you're not going to be doing all of these things, and that sort of motivates them to want to do golf as opposed to go to chicken shops.
Playing sport, isn't it? Like, they're not there hanging around and sort of...
Yeah, and it's so easy to do, especially with all of this, you know, Instagram and TikTok business and all of that, but just to let them know all of the advantages of playing golf and what they're going to reap from that, growing their characteristics and just being able to engage. And, you know, a lot of corporate stuff happens over a game of golf, so if they know how to conduct themselves around people, it will help them in so many different areas. So I always sort of get that message across.
Yeah, hi. Your talk was it's really inspiring. I think my question is around barriers to entry in the game, and cost is definitely a huge one for golf. So for girls and for women coming into the sport, how do you address that?
Well, like I said earlier, I make it really affordable. So I think most golf clubs that you go into, if you was going to do a group lesson, it might be like £20, £25. But for the last 7 years, I've kept it at £10 per lady, and then 8 for the girls. And then with my partnership with the Golf Foundation, everything's funded for the girls in the school. So I sort of try and work with brands just to make everything as affordable as possible.
Can you then influence golf clubs to offer discounted memberships, or is there a way of changing it for the better? Because it is very elitist, it's very expensive.
Absolutely, yeah.
Even the equipment.
Yeah, I am working on that at the moment with England Golf. So yeah, we're trying to get something in all clubs across the board, because the difficulty is with golf clubs, some of them are sort of privately owned by the members. So despite what England Golf or the RNA might think about things or advise, they can still do what they want to do. So now I'm sort of working with England Golf and the RNA on just making something mandatory in all golf clubs in order to make it really more diverse and inclusive. So yeah, it's a work in progress, but it will happen.
Our local golf club has got something that my husband started my son on. It's like £10 to join, and that's it. You can just go and play, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
There's a new obsession.
Yeah, it does become addictive.
Yeah, just come back with my husband.
Is that £10 for kids, or is it £10 for
For
kids?
kids,
Okay, yeah.
Under 16.
Yeah, okay, yeah, brilliant. Yeah, most golf clubs will do like a really cheap membership for kids, but yeah, for adults, we're trying to sort of target that as well. Because as well, you know, for the ladies that go to work or have got kids or grandmothers or whatever, it's like playing a round of golf takes about 4.5 hours. And not everyone's got that time, so we're trying to sort of introduce like a 9-hole membership where you might just have like a couple of hours to like go out and play. The only sort of challenges that come with that is people playing like full whack for memberships that cost like a few grand, and they're like, you know, well, we're paying this. So that's the only sort of area of conflict which we're trying to tackle. But yeah, most golf clubs have got it for kids, but it's just about introducing it for the women.
Got time for one more question. If there are any other questions? Yeah, at the back.
You obviously do a lot of coaching, developing younger kind of athletes and golfers. How do you approach, you know, developing children and wanting them to love the game, but also wanting to make sure they behave and bringing them up with that balance of loving sport, but also keeping them under control and trying to get them better?
I think that's all sort of in your coaching style. I think you have to obviously like show like a place of authority like when you're teaching kids and just be really firm. I haven't had to do it like myself personally, but I know of people who have had like red cone boxes for if you are naughty to sort of go in and just like reflect and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I haven't experienced that, but saying that I do coach girls only. I used to do like mixed groups, but I just noticed that the girls work completely differently, like when they're on their own, and confidence levels naturally are a lot lower. So I just target them, and in most golf clubs you go into as well, the statistic is like 80% male, 20% female, so that's why I do target girls only. But yeah, I think it's just about being like really stern and stuff like that, and yeah, I just give them the eyes.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a fascinating
Thank you so much for
conversation.
having me, I really appreciate it.
Great. We have a final hand.